The wind smashed against the thick glass of the Chicago penthouse. Bella stood perfectly still, staring out at the dark, frozen city. The heavy silk of her wedding dress felt like a cage pulling her down. It was supposed to be her sister's dress, but her family needed a quick replacement when her perfect sister ran away just 2 days ago. Bella was the trash they always threw at their problems. She was the discarded daughter, the one locked in the basement, the one they only remembered when they needed someone to bleed. The door crashed open behind her. Ralph walked in. He didn't look like a happy groom ready for his wedding night. He looked like a man ready to kill. He ripped his black silk tie off his neck and threw it on the hardwood floor. His dark eyes locked onto Bella, and there was no love in them. There was only pure, burning hate. "Take that shit off," Ralph snarled. His voice was low, rough, and dangerous. "You look like a damn joke." Bella didn't flinch. She turned her head slowly to look at him. He was tall, with sharp jawlines and thick black hair that fell into his angry eyes. He was a monster, a known killer in the business world. But Bella had seen worse monsters in her life. "It's just a dress," Bella said calmly. Ralph closed the distance between them in 3 long, fast steps. He grabbed her arm, his large fingers digging into her brown skin like sharp claws. Bella kept her face completely blank, even though it hurt. She refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing her in pain. "Listen to me, you fake bitch," Ralph hissed, his face inches from hers. He smelled like expensive whiskey, cold rain, and dark anger. "You are nothing to me. Your trash family owed mine a bride and they sent their leftover garbage. You will stay in this room. You will not talk to my friends. You will not act like my wife. I am looking for someone, and until I find her, you are just a ghost in my house. If you get in my way, I will ruin you. Understand?" He squeezed tighter. Bella felt a deep purple bruise forming on her arm. She stared right back into his dark, furious eyes, not blinking, not breathing. Guys, before we see what Bella does to this arrogant jerk, please leave a like if you are enjoying the video. It really helps the algorithm push more stories like this to you. Also, let me know in the comments, where are you watching from today? And listen to me very carefully. If you don't hit that subscribe button for Afro-Korean Love FM right now, you might leave Bella alone in this cold room with a monster who wants to break her. Don't be the reason she loses hope and fails her revenge against her evil family. Subscribe now to keep her safe. Ralph shoved her back hard. Bella hit the edge of the large, king-sized bed, but she caught her balance before she fell. He didn't even look to see if she was okay. He turned his back on her and walked out of the room. He slammed the heavy wooden door so hard the paintings on the walls shook. A second later, the heavy metal lock clicked from the outside. He was locking her in like a dog. Bella stood in the quiet room for a long time. The sound of the howling Chicago wind was the only noise. Then, a slow, dark smile spread across her face. The scared, unwanted daughter act was over. She reached behind her back and grabbed the tight laces of the white wedding dress. She pulled hard. The cheap fabric ripped down the middle. She didn't care. She stepped out of the heavy pile of cloth and kicked it away into the corner. Underneath, she wore simple black shorts and a tight black tank top. She walked over to her cheap, beaten-up suitcase sitting on the floor. Her father didn't even buy her new bags for her wedding night. He really thought she was just a helpless pawn he could trade for a business deal. They were so fucking stupid. Bella pushed a hidden button on the inside of the suitcase lining. A small secret pocket popped open. She pulled out a thick, black encrypted phone. It was not the cheap phone her father gave her yesterday to track her. This phone cost more than her father's entire house. She turned it on, and the screen glowed green in the dark room. She pressed one button. It rang twice before a deep, rough voice answered. "Boss," the voice said. It was Marcus, her second-in-command in the underground. "I'm in," Bella said. Her voice was totally different now. It wasn't soft or scared like it was with her father. It was cold, sharp, and carried the weight of a true boss. "The wedding is done. I am locked in the master bedroom of his downtown penthouse." "Did he hurt you?" Marcus asked. The sound of heavy guns loading echoed in the background of the phone call. "He grabbed my arm. It's nothing. He thinks I'm a joke. He thinks I'm a scared little girl." Bella walked over to the minibar, cracked open a bottle of cold water, and took a long drink. "Are the men in position?" "Yes, boss. The Washington family thinks they are safe now. Your father threw a big party tonight at his mansion to celebrate the deal he made with Ralph's family. The mayor is there." The police chief is there. They are all drinking expensive champagne and laughing. Good, Bella said, her eyes turning deadly. Let them laugh. Burn their South Side warehouse. The one with all the illegal cars and the stolen cargo. Make sure nobody dies tonight, but make sure they lose at least $10 million. I want my father to wake up crying tomorrow. Consider it done, boss. What about the husband, Ralph? Bella walked to the door and touched the cold wood. Leave him to me. He told me he is looking for someone. Some woman. He is distracted. That makes my job easier. I will use his money and his house to crush my family without anyone knowing it is me. And then, when my family is destroyed, I will crush him for putting his hands on me. Be careful, Bella. Ralph is crazy. People call him the mad dog of Chicago for a reason. He destroys everything he touches. I know, Bella said, but I own the shadows. Call me when the warehouse is ashes. She hung up. She tossed the phone onto the bed. She needed to know what Ralph was doing right now. He locked her in, but she was never trapped anywhere. She walked over to the expensive smart TV on the wall. She pulled a small black wire from her suitcase and plugged it into the back of the TV, connecting it to her phone. Her fingers typed fast on the screen. It took her exactly 3 minutes to hack into the penthouse security cameras. The TV screen flickered and split into 4 camera views: the living room, the kitchen, the hallway, and his private office. She found him in the office. Ralph was sitting at his large oak desk. The angry, dangerous man who just grabbed her and yelled at her was completely gone. Instead, he looked broken and tired. He was holding something small in his hands. A glass of expensive whiskey sat untouched next to him. Bella zoomed the camera in on the office. She squinted at the screen. What was he holding? It looked like a piece of dirty string. No, it was a braided bracelet. Faded red and black strings tied together in clumsy, ugly knots. Bella's breath stopped in her throat. Her heart slammed against her ribs so hard it hurt. She dropped her phone on the floor. No, it couldn't be. She watched Ralph lift the cheap, dirty bracelet to his face and press his forehead against it. His broad shoulders shook a little. He pulled his phone out and made a quick call. Bella quickly tapped her screen to hack into the room's microphone so she could hear him. Did you find her? Ralph's voice came through the TV speakers. It sounded completely desperate. I don't care how much it costs. I told you to turn the whole damn city upside down. She has to be here. My little bird. She is the only reason I am still alive. Bella stepped back from the TV. Her legs felt weak. She had to sit on the edge of the bed. Little bird. That was the name, the secret name. 14 years ago, in a dirty, rainy alley behind a broken-down orphanage, a 10-year-old Bella had fought off 3 older boys with a broken glass bottle to protect a skinny, bruised Korean boy who couldn't speak English very well. He was bleeding from a cut on his arm. She had torn pieces of string from her own clothes, red and black, and tied them around his wrist to stop the bleeding. She called him her shadow because he followed her everywhere. He called her his little bird because she was always trying to fly away from the bad place. They promised to run away together. They promised to rule the city. But a week later, her evil father had found her hiding spot. He dragged her back to the family mansion by her hair to be a servant, and she never saw the boy again. She thought he was dead. Bella stared at the screen. The big, scary Mafia boss sitting in the office, the man who just called her a fake bitch, the man she just planned to destroy, was her shadow, her childhood best friend, the only person in the world she ever truly loved. And he was tearing the city apart to find her, spending millions of dollars, going crazy with grief, completely unaware that he had just married her and locked her in his bedroom. Bella grabbed her head. This ruined everything. If she told him who she was, he would love her. He would protect her. But she wasn't that sweet, innocent little bird anymore. She was a ruthless, blood-soaked underground boss who ordered warehouses to be burned down. If Ralph found out what she had become, what she did in the shadows, his shattered heart might reject her. He loved a memory of a sweet girl, not a killer. She looked at the screen again. Ralph was crying silently, holding the old bracelet. Bella's chest ached. She had to make a choice, and she had to make it tonight. The green light of the TV screen threw shadows across Bella's face. She could not look away. Her chest moved up and down in short, fast breaths. The man on the screen, the terrifying Ralph, was gently rubbing his thumb over the dirty red and black strings of that old bracelet. He looked like a little boy who had lost his favorite toy. No, he looked like a man who had lost his soul. Bella covered her mouth with her hand. She wanted to scream. She wanted to run down the long hallway, kick his office door open, and yell, "I am here, I am your little bird." But she didn't move. She forced her body to stay totally still on the edge of the large bed. She was not a stupid girl in a fairy tale. She was Bella, the underground boss who controlled half the illegal money in the city. Just 10 minutes ago, she ordered her men to burn a building to the ground. She knew men would get hurt. She knew families would lose money. She didn't care. She was a killer in the dark. If she walked into that office right now, what would Ralph do? He loved the memory of a sweet, brave 10-year-old girl who tied a string around his bleeding arm. He did not love a ruthless woman who carried a gun and ordered buildings to burn. If she told him the truth, the shock would break him. Or worse, he would look at her with disgust. He would see that his little bird was actually a monster. "No," Bella whispered to the empty room. "Not yet. I need to know who he really is first. I need to make sure he won't betray me." On the TV screen, Ralph suddenly moved. He took a deep breath. His broad shoulders went up and then dropped down hard. He carefully folded the cheap string bracelet and put it inside the front pocket of his expensive dress shirt, right over his heart. Then, he grabbed the glass of dark brown whiskey from his desk. He threw his head back and drank the whole glass in 1 second. When he put the glass down, his face changed completely. The sad, broken boy was gone. The mad dog of Chicago was back. His dark eyes were cold, dead, and full of violent anger. He stood up from the desk, turned off the office light, and walked out into the hallway. Bella watched the hallway camera. He was walking fast. He was heading straight for the master bedroom. "Shit," Bella hissed. She jumped off the bed. She moved faster than a shadow. She grabbed the black wire from the back of the TV and pulled it out. The screen went completely black. She rolled up the wire and shoved it into her pocket. She ran to her cheap suitcase, grabbed her encrypted boss phone, and pushed it deep into the hidden lining of the bag. She clicked the secret button, and the pocket locked perfectly. She looked down at her clothes. She was wearing tight black shorts and a black tank top. She looked like a fighter. That was bad. Her family told everyone she was weak, shy, and scared of her own shadow. She reached into her bag and pulled out an ugly, oversized gray sweater. It belonged to her evil sister, the one who ran away. Bella threw the thick sweater over her head. It hung loose on her shoulders and hid her shape. She heard heavy footsteps, stopping right outside the thick wooden door. Bella quickly dropped to the floor. She sat in the corner of the room, far away from the bed, pulling her knees up to her chest. She let her long, dark hair fall over her face. She made her eyes look wide and empty. She practiced this look for years when her father locked her in the basement. It was her survival face. The heavy metal lock clicked loudly. The door handle turned, and the door was pushed open with a loud bang. Ralph stood in the doorway. The dim light from the hallway hit his back, making him look like a giant black shadow. He smelled like strong alcohol and cold anger. He stared at the empty bed. Then his dark eyes scanned the room and found Bella sitting on the floor in the corner. He let out a short, cruel laugh. It sounded like scraping metal. "Look at you," Ralph sneered. He stepped into the room and closed the door slowly behind him. Click. Playing the pathetic little victim. "Did your trash father tell you to act like a sad puppy so I would feel bad for you? It is not going to work, Bella, or whatever your name is." Bella kept her head down. She looked at his expensive black leather shoes walking toward her on the soft white rug. Every step he took felt heavy, like a predator walking toward a trapped rabbit. "My name is Bella," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it did not shake. She made sure of that. Ralph stopped a few feet away from her. He looked down at her like she was a piece of dirt he stepped on in the street. "I don't give a damn what your name is. You are a mistake. You are a placeholder. Your sister was supposed to marry me so our families could merge their money. But she ran away because she is a coward, and they threw you in my face instead." "I didn't want to come here," Bella said, looking at the wall next to his leg. "I didn't choose this." "Shut the fuck up," Ralph snapped. His voice was suddenly loud and sharp, echoing in the large room. "Do not speak unless I ask you a question. You think you have it bad? You get to sit in a $50 million penthouse while your family gets exactly what they wanted. You are just a parasite." Bella's jaw tightened. She bit the inside of her cheek so hard she tasted copper blood. He was insulting her, calling her a parasite, when she was the one who built her own empire from nothing. She wanted to stand up, grab him by the throat, and show him exactly how strong she was. She wanted to sweep his legs out from under him and pin him to the floor. But then she remembered the cheap string bracelet sitting in his shirt pocket, right over his heart. Her string. She forced herself to relax. She let out a small, fake breath of fear. "What do you want from me?" she asked quietly. Ralph ran a large hand through his messy black hair. He looked around the room, breathing hard. He looked trapped, too. Trapped by his promise to his family, trapped by his search for a girl he couldn't find. "I want you to be invisible," Ralph said. His voice dropped lower, becoming a dangerous growl. "I have to keep you here because of the business deal. Tomorrow, we have to go to a public dinner. We have to smile for the cameras. We have to pretend we are a happy, powerful couple. If you embarrass me, if you make me look stupid, I will lock you in a real cage. Not a nice bedroom, a real one." Bella finally looked up. She let her dark eyes meet his. She didn't look scared anymore. She just looked tired. "I know how to be invisible. I have been invisible my whole life." Ralph stopped. He stared at her face, really stared. The dim light of the room fell across Bella's brown skin, catching the slight curve of her jaw and the deep, dark brown of her eyes. For one tiny second, Ralph's angry expression slipped. A strange look flashed in his eyes. Confusion. A sudden, sharp memory. He tilted his head a little bit, looking at her eyes as if he recognized the fire hiding deep inside them. Bella's heart skipped a beat. Did he see it? Did he see his little bird looking back at him? Ralph took a sudden step forward. He reached down and grabbed the collar of her oversized gray sweater. He pulled her up from the floor with one hand. He was incredibly strong. Bella let him pull her up, keeping her body loose so she wouldn't fight back by accident. He pulled her close to his chest. He was so tall she had to look up at him. She could feel the heat coming off his body. She could smell the sharp whiskey on his breath and the faint, clean smell of expensive soap on his skin. Her chest brushed against his shirt, right where the bracelet was hidden. "Don't look at me like that," Ralph whispered, his voice rough and uneven. "Like what?" Bella asked softly. "Like you understand me," he hissed. His fingers tightened on her sweater. "You don't know shit about me. You are a spoiled, useless girl from a family of rats. You will never understand what it takes to survive in my world." Bella almost laughed out loud. She ran his world. She was the reason he didn't have total control of the South Side. She was the nightmare his men talked about in the dark. "Okay," Bella said out loud. She kept her face blank. "I don't understand you. Just let me go to sleep." Ralph stared at her lips for a second. His chest moved heavily against hers. The anger inside him was fighting with something else. Something he didn't want to feel. He suddenly shoved her away, pushing her backward. Bella stumbled but caught her balance perfectly, landing light on her feet. A normal, weak girl would have fallen backward and hit the floor. Ralph's eyes narrowed. He noticed it. He noticed her perfect balance. "You don't move like a scared girl." Bella froze inside. She made a mistake. She moved like a fighter. She quickly dropped her shoulders and looked down at the floor, wrapping her arms around her stomach. I took gymnastics when I was little," she lied smoothly, "before my father locked me away." Ralph watched her for a long, silent moment. The quiet in the room was heavy and suffocating. The wind outside slammed against the thick glass windows, a cold Chicago storm brewing in the dark. "Sleep on the couch," Ralph finally said. His voice was cold again. The moment was gone. "I am taking the bed. If you make a sound while I am sleeping, I will throw you out the window." He turned his back on her. He walked over to the massive king-sized bed, took off his shoes, and threw them into the corner. He didn't even take off his clothes. He just collapsed onto the mattress face down. He was exhausted. The search for his little bird, the fake wedding, the pressure of his violent life, it was all crushing him. Bella stood in the corner. She watched him breathe. She watched the slow rise and fall of his broad back. She walked over to the expensive leather couch on the other side of the room. She lay down and pulled a thin blanket over her body. She stared at the ceiling in the dark. Her phone was hidden in her bag. Her men were currently burning her father's warehouse to ashes. Her father would be screaming in anger by morning. Her revenge had officially started. And her husband, the deadliest man in the city, was sleeping just 20 feet away. completely unaware that the woman he was tearing the city apart to find was sleeping in the same room. Bella closed her eyes. Tomorrow was going to be a war. The gray light of morning pushed through the thick glass of the penthouse windows. Outside, a brutal Chicago winter storm was dumping heavy snow on the city. The wind howled like a dying animal, but inside the massive room, it was completely silent. Bella opened her eyes. She didn't stretch. She didn't make a sound. She just woke up instantly, perfectly still on the expensive leather couch. She listened closely. Across the room, Ralph was still breathing heavily on the king-sized bed, his face buried in the white pillows. Bella moved her hand slowly under her thin blanket. She reached into her cheap suitcase sitting on the floor next to her, pressed the hidden button in the lining, and pulled out her heavy, encrypted phone. The screen glowed faintly in the dark room. She had one unread message from Marcus. "Job done. The Southside warehouse is a pile of black dust. Nobody died. Your father lost $12 million in stolen cars and imported guns. He is losing his mind and screaming at the cops right now." Bella's lips curved into a small, cold smile. Her revenge was officially moving. She typed back quickly, her fingers making no sound on the glass screen. "Good work. Tell the men to go dark for 2 days. I don't want anyone on the streets." She locked the phone and shoved it deep back into the hidden pocket. Suddenly, a loud, obnoxious ringtone blasted through the quiet room. It was Ralph's phone resting on the wooden nightstand. Ralph jerked awake violently. He didn't rub his eyes or yawn like a normal person. He moved like a wild dog sensing danger. He grabbed the phone and pressed it to his ear. "Speak," Ralph barked. His voice was thick with sleep but completely full of danger. Bella pulled the thin blanket up to her chin, making herself look small and scared on the couch. She watched him. Ralph sat up on the edge of the bed. He was still wearing the expensive dress shirt and pants from the night before. The muscles in his broad back tightened so hard they looked like thick ropes. "What the fuck do you mean it's gone?" Ralph yelled into the phone. He stood up, pacing the soft white rug barefoot. "Washington promised me that warehouse and the cars inside it as part of our merger. That was my money. I don't give a shit if the fire department is still spraying water. Find out who lit the match right now." He pulled the phone away from his ear and threw it hard against the bedroom wall. It didn't break, but it left a deep dent in the expensive wallpaper before dropping to the floor. Ralph ran both his large hands through his messy black hair, cursing loudly in Korean. He was breathing fast, his chest rising and falling with pure rage. Then, he turned his dark, angry eyes to the corner of the room. He saw Bella watching him. Bella quickly shrank back against the couch cushions, pulling her knees tight to her chest. She made her eyes wide and terrified. "Did you know about this?" Ralph asked, walking slowly toward her. His voice dropped to a dangerously low whisper. "Did your snake of a father plan this to cheat me out of my money?" "Know about what?" Bella whispered, letting her voice shake just a tiny bit. "What happened?" "Your father's Southside warehouse burned to the ground a few hours ago," Ralph sneered, stopping right in front of the couch. He looked down at her with pure disgust. $12 million worth of goods gone up in smoke. And it just happens to be the exact property he was supposed to transfer to my name today. Convenient, isn't it? He keeps his cars, burns the building for the insurance money, and hands me a pile of ashes. "I don't know anything," Bella said, looking down at his bare feet on the rug. "My father never tells me about his business. He just locks me in the basement. You know this, they don't talk to me." Ralph stared at her. He studied her face, looking for a lie, looking for a crack in her story. Bella was a master at this game. She kept her breathing fast and shallow, exactly like a victim waiting to be hit. She knew her father didn't burn his own warehouse. She did, but Ralph was too blinded by his own anger and his hatred for her family to see the truth. "He is a fool," Ralph spat, turning away from her. "And you are just as useless. Get up, go take a shower. I can't stand looking at you in that ugly sweater." An hour later, Bella walked out into the massive dining room. The penthouse was huge, all glass, black marble, and cold steel. It didn't look like a home. It looked like a high-tech fortress floating above the frozen city. After a long, hot shower where Bella silently mapped out her next attack against her family, she felt ready to face the day. She was wearing simple black jeans and a plain white t-shirt. Ralph was already sitting at the far end of a very long glass dining table. He was wearing a fresh, tailored black suit that fit his wide shoulders perfectly. A heavy gold watch shined on his left wrist. He was drinking black coffee and reading a digital tablet. There was a plate of expensive fruit and perfectly cooked eggs in front of him, but he wasn't eating. A maid stood quietly in the corner of the room, staring at the floor. Bella walked over and pulled out a heavy metal chair. She sat at the exact opposite end of the table, as far away from him as possible. The maid quickly rushed over and poured a steaming cup of coffee for her, then stepped back into the shadows. Bella stared at the dark liquid. She wanted to add sugar, but she didn't want to make any noise clinking the silver spoon against the expensive cup. "Eat," Ralph said without looking up from his glowing tablet. "My styling team will be here in 20 minutes. Tonight is the annual syndicate dinner. Every boss in Chicago will be there, including your pathetic father. They all want to see the new bride. They all want to see the garbage woman who replaced the perfect Washington daughter." Bella picked up a silver fork. Her hand was perfectly steady. "What do you want me to do tonight?" she asked softly. Ralph finally looked up. His dark, cold eyes locked onto hers all the way across the long glass table. "I want you to keep your mouth shut," he said clearly. Every word sounded like an order. "You will stand next to me. You will smile. If anyone asks you a question, you look at me and let me answer it. You do not drink alcohol. You do not wander off. If you embarrass me in front of the Italians or the Russians, I promise you, Bella, I will make you disappear." "Okay," Bella said quietly. Inside, her blood was boiling hot. He really thought she was just a weak little toy he could control. If he only knew that the Russian boss he was trying to impress tonight owed Bella a massive favor for smuggling his illegal guns across the border last year. "Your father will probably try to talk to you tonight," Ralph continued, taking a slow sip of his black coffee. "He will try to use you to get close to me, especially now that his warehouse is ash and he needs my money to survive. Do not talk to him. You belong to me now. Your loyalty is to my name, not the rats who sold you." Bella wanted to laugh right in his handsome, arrogant face. Her loyalty was only to herself and her underground empire, but she just nodded slowly and took a small bite of a strawberry. The private elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse living room with a soft ding. 3 women walked out. They were dressed in sharp, stylish black clothes. They carried large garment bags, heavy makeup kits, and expensive jewelry boxes. They looked like an army preparing for war. "Mr. Kang," the lead stylist said, bowing her head slightly. She was a tall, thin woman with perfectly straight white hair and cold blue eyes. "We are here to prepare your wife for the evening." Ralph stood up from the table. He buttoned his suit jacket, hiding the spot on his shirt where Bella knew her old red and black string bracelet rested near his heart. "Make her look like she is worth the $12 million I lost today," he said coldly. He didn't even look at Bella as he walked past the long table. "I have to go down to the city and clean up her father's mess. Have her ready by 6 o'clock sharp." He walked into his private elevator, and the silver doors closed behind him. The massive penthouse was suddenly very quiet. The 3 stylists turned their cold eyes to Bella. She was still sitting at the huge table in her simple t-shirt, holding a fork. "Stand up, please," the white-haired woman said. Her voice was not friendly or warm. She looked at Bella like she was a dirty stray dog that needed a bath. "We have a lot of work to do. You are entirely the wrong shape for the dresses Mr. Kang ordered." Bella slowly put the silver fork down. She stood up. She let her shoulders droop forward, hiding her perfect posture. "I'm sorry," she whispered. The women led her into a massive dressing room filled with bright lights and tall mirrors. They told her to take off her clothes. Bella hesitated. She had deadly secrets written on her body. She had thin, pale scars from knife fights in the underground streets. She had a small bullet graze on her left hip from a deal gone bad 2 years ago. If these women saw those marks, they might tell Ralph. A scared little girl locked in a basement doesn't have bullet wounds. "We don't have all day, dear," the lead stylist snapped, tapping her foot on the floor. Bella took a deep breath. She pulled the white t-shirt over her head. She dropped her jeans. She stood in the middle of the bright room in just her simple black underwear. The 3 women gasped. They stopped moving. They stared at her bare skin. "Oh my God," one of the younger assistants whispered, raising a shaking hand to cover her mouth. They weren't looking at her muscles or the bullet graze. They were looking at her back. Bella's back was covered in long, ugly, raised scars. They were the old, faded whip marks from her father's heavy leather belt. There was a nasty burn mark on her right shoulder from when her uncle pushed her against a hot iron stove when she was 12. It was the physical proof of how the Washington family really treated their unwanted trash. Bella quickly turned around, hiding her stomach and hips from the mirrors. The stylists had only seen the abuse scars on her back. That was perfect. It fit her fake story exactly. "My father," Bella said softly, looking down at the soft white rug, pretending to be deeply ashamed. He gets angry very easily." The lead stylist's cold face softened just a little bit. The disgust in her blue eyes changed to a quiet, heavy pity. "I understand," the older woman said quietly, her voice losing its sharp edge. "We will find a dress with a high back. We will use heavy makeup to cover the marks on your arms and shoulders. Do not worry, child. We will make sure Mr. Kang is proud to stand next to you tonight." Bella nodded, keeping her face perfectly sad and broken. Deep inside, a dark thrill ran through her. These people were so incredibly easy to trick. For the next 5 hours, the women went to work. They pulled her dark hair, painted her nails blood red, and rubbed expensive, sweet-smelling creams all over her skin. They finally pulled a dress out of a black bag. It felt like cold water against her body. It was a deep, dangerous red silk dress. It hugged her curves perfectly, but the back came all the way up to her neck, hiding every single scar from her family's abuse. It left her arms bare, but the assistants used heavy, waterproof makeup to completely hide the fresh purple bruises Ralph gave her the night before. They pinned her thick natural hair up into an elegant, complicated style that made her neck look long, proud, and royal. They attached heavy diamonds to her ears and locked a thick diamond necklace around her throat. It felt heavy, like a beautiful, shiny collar. When they were finally finished, they stepped back. Bella looked at herself in the massive floor-to-ceiling mirror. She didn't look like the discarded, useless daughter anymore. She didn't look like the ruthless underground boss in dark clothes either. She looked like a queen. A beautiful, dangerous, untouchable queen. The private elevator dinged loudly. It was exactly 6 o'clock. Heavy, confident footsteps echoed on the hardwood floor of the living room. "Is she ready?" Ralph's deep, rough voice called out. He sounded exhausted and angry. The day clearly did not go well for him in the city. The lead stylist opened the large dressing room doors. Bella stepped slowly out into the main living room. Ralph was standing by the glass bar, pouring himself a large glass of brown whiskey. He looked up. The glass stopped halfway to his mouth. His dark eyes completely froze. The anger slowly drained out of his face, replaced by total, absolute shock. He stared at her. The deep red silk, the sparkling diamonds, the perfect glow of her brown skin. She looked breathtaking. Bella stood perfectly still. She let him look. She wanted him to see exactly what his family bought. She wanted him to feel confused by his own reaction. Ralph slowly put the heavy glass down on the marble counter. He didn't take a drink. He walked slowly across the massive room toward her. His dark eyes were moving all over her face, searching for something, looking at her like he was seeing her for the very first time. He stopped right in front of her. He was so close she could feel the heat radiating from his chest. She could smell the cold winter snow clinging to his black suit coat and the faint, rich smell of his cigars. He slowly reached his large right hand up. He didn't grab her roughly this time. His long fingers gently brushed against the cold diamonds resting on her throat. His soft touch sent a strange, hot shock straight through Bella's chest. "You clean up well," Ralph said. His rough voice was much softer than before. It almost sounded like he couldn't catch his breath. "Thank you," Bella whispered back, staring right into his eyes. Ralph's gaze locked onto hers. For one long, silent second, the cold, arrogant mafia boss completely disappeared. He just looked like a man who was totally captivated by the woman standing in front of him. But then, he blinked hard. His sharp jaw tightened. He dropped his hand quickly, pulling it away like her brown skin had burned his fingers. "Don't let it go to your head," he said, his voice going hard and cold again as he stepped back. "It is just an expensive costume. You are still the exact same underneath. Let's go. We have a whole city to lie to." The ride down the private elevator was completely silent. Bella watched the digital numbers change on the small screen above the metal doors. 10, 9, 8. Ralph stood on the completely opposite side of the elevator box. He did not look at her. He kept his dark eyes fixed straight ahead, but his jaw was tight. He was holding his anger in, locking it behind a thick wall. The doors opened to the cold, concrete underground parking garage. The air was freezing. Bella shivered a little bit as the Chicago winter chill hit her bare arms. Ralph walked fast, his long legs eating up the distance to a massive, shiny black SUV. Two huge men in gray suits were waiting by the car. They were Ralph's personal guards. They bowed their heads when he walked up. "Everything clear?" Ralph asked the guard with a thick scar over his eye. "Yes, boss, the streets are clean. The weather is bad, but the route to the hotel is safe," the guard answered quickly. He opened the heavy back door of the SUV. Ralph climbed in without waiting for Bella. She had to lift the heavy skirt of her red silk dress so it wouldn't drag on the dirty concrete floor. She climbed into the back seat and slid over to the far side, pressing her shoulder against the cold glass of the window. The guard slammed the door shut. The inside of the SUV smelled like fresh leather and Ralph's expensive cigar smoke. The engine started with a deep, quiet growl. The car moved out of the garage and into the dark, snowy city streets. Bella watched the snow falling thick and fast under the orange streetlights. The roads were covered in white slush. Inside the car, it was warm, but the silence between her and Ralph felt like pure ice. She could hear him breathing in the dark. She heard the soft clink of glass. She turned her head just a little bit. Ralph was pouring himself a drink from the small crystal bar built into the middle of the back seat. "Do you want to say something?" Ralph suddenly asked. He didn't look at her. He just stared at the amber liquid in his glass. "No," Bella answered softly. She kept her hands folded perfectly in her lap. "Good," Ralph said, taking a slow sip. "Keep it that way. In 10 minutes, we are going to walk into a room full of wolves. Every single person in that room wants to see me fail. They want to see if I am weak, and they will look at you to find my weakness." He finally turned his head to look at her. The passing streetlights flashed across his sharp face, making his dark eyes look dangerous and wild. "Your father is going to be there," Ralph said. His voice was a low, angry growl. "He is desperate. My men told me the police are officially calling the warehouse fire a total loss. He has zero money left to pay his debts. He is going to come crawling to me tonight, begging for the merger money I promised him for your perfect sister. And when I tell him to go to hell, he might try to use you." Bella let her eyes widen, acting like she was terrified of the idea. "I won't talk to him, I promise." Ralph leaned closer to her. The smell of strong whiskey washed over her. "You better not. You don't look at him. You don't cry. You stand behind me. If you show him even one drop of weakness, he will grab onto it like a drowning rat. Do you understand me?" "Yes," Bella whispered. She looked down at her expensive diamond necklace. "I understand." She understood perfectly. She was the one who lit the match that burned her father's world down. She wanted to see him sweat. She wanted to see him beg. The heavy SUV slowed down and turned into a wide, circular driveway. Through the snowy window, Bella saw a massive, old-money hotel. Huge stone pillars held up a grand roof. The entrance was bright with warm yellow light. A dozen valet drivers in thick winter coats were running around, opening doors for rich men in dark suits and women in heavy fur coats. "Showtime," Ralph muttered. He finished his drink in one fast gulp and slammed the glass down into the holder. The car stopped. The guard opened Bella's door first. The freezing wind whipped snow directly into her face. She took a sharp breath, the cold air biting her lungs. She stepped out into the snow in her expensive high heels. Ralph slid out right behind her. As soon as his feet hit the pavement, his entire body changed. The angry, exhausted man from the car was gone. Suddenly, he stood taller. His shoulders went back. He looked like a king stepping onto his battlefield. He reached out and wrapped his large, warm hand around Bella's bare waist. Bella jumped a little at the sudden contact. His fingers pressed firmly into the red silk on her hip. It was a completely possessive touch. "Smile," Ralph whispered into her ear. His breath was warm against her freezing skin. "Act like you are the luckiest woman in Chicago." Bella forced a shy, sweet smile onto her face. She let him pull her close against his side. They walked up the red carpet toward the heavy glass doors of the hotel. A few photographers stood off to the side, snapping rapid pictures. The bright white camera flashes blinded Bella for a second, but she kept her fake, happy smile perfectly frozen on her face. Inside the hotel, it was completely different. The cold wind was replaced by the loud, heavy hum of hundreds of people talking at once. The grand ballroom was massive. Giant crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceiling, throwing golden light everywhere. Waiters in white coats walked through the crowd carrying silver trays of expensive champagne. But this was not a normal rich party. Bella could feel the danger in the air. The men standing around laughing were killers. They were the heads of the Italian families, the leaders of the Russian bratva, and the bosses of the Irish gangs. They all wore expensive suits, but they all had cold, dead eyes. When Ralph walked into the room with Bella on his arm, the noise level dropped by half. Hundreds of eyes turned to look at them. Bella could feel the heavy weight of their stares. They were looking at the mad dog of Chicago, and they were looking at the mysterious, unwanted bride he was forced to marry. "Keep walking," Ralph muttered under his breath, his hand tightening on her waist. "Don't look at the floor. Look straight ahead." Bella did exactly what he said. She kept her chin up, but she made sure to keep her eyes soft and slightly scared. She let Ralph guide her through the crowd. Men stepped out of his way like the Red Sea parting. They nodded to him with deep respect. "Mr. Kang," a deep, heavy voice called out. An older man with a thick gray beard and a massive chest blocked their path. It was Ivan, the head of the Russian organization. He was holding a small glass of clear vodka. Ralph stopped perfectly still. "Ivan, it is good to see you." "And you, my friend?" Ivan rumbled, taking a sip of his drink. His sharp blue eyes shifted from Ralph to Bella. He looked her up and down slowly. "So, this is the new wife, the Washington girl." "Yes," Ralph said coldly. He didn't offer Bella's name. He just pulled her a fraction of an inch closer to his side. Ivan stared at Bella. Deep inside, Bella's heart beat a little faster. Exactly 8 months ago, Ivan's men were trapped by the police at the Canadian border with a truck full of illegal weapons. Bella, acting as the hidden underground boss, made one phone call and opened a secret train tunnel for them, saving Ivan millions of dollars and keeping his son out of prison. She never met Ivan face to face, but she knew he respected her secret identity more than anyone else in this room. Bella looked directly into Ivan's blue eyes. She didn't smile. She just blinked once very slowly. Ivan's thick eyebrows pulled together for a tiny second. He looked confused. Then he looked at the way she held her shoulders. He looked at the perfect, deadly stillness in her posture. A very small, knowing smirk touched the corner of the old Russian's mouth. He didn't say anything, but he raised his vodka glass slightly in her direction. "Congratulations on the wedding, Kang," Ivan said smoothly. "She is very special." "Thank you," Ralph replied, completely missing the hidden message between them. Ivan walked away, vanishing into the crowd. Ralph let out a slow breath, relaxing just a little bit, but his relaxation did not last long. "Ralph, Ralph, my boy," a high, panicked voice yelled over the music. Bella's stomach twisted. She knew that voice. She hated that voice. A man pushed his way through the crowd. He was wearing a fancy tuxedo, but it looked messy. His tie was loose. His face was red, and heavy drops of sweat rolled down his forehead. It was Richard Washington, her father. Ralph's entire body went tight. His hand on Bella's waist squeezed so hard it actually hurt. The air around them suddenly felt freezing cold. Richard stopped a few feet away, breathing hard. He looked around the room nervously, noticing that a lot of the other Mafia bosses were watching them now. The Washington family was supposed to be powerful, but right now, Richard looked like a complete beggar. "Ralph, thank God," Richard said, wiping his sweaty forehead with a white handkerchief. "I have been trying to call your office all day. We need to talk, in private." "We have absolutely nothing to talk about, Richard," Ralph said. His voice was not loud, but it carried perfectly over the music. It was sharp as a knife. Richard flinched. "Please, son, you heard the news. The warehouse? My South Side warehouse. It burned to the ground this morning. Everything is gone. The cars, the cargo, everything. I need the merger money transferred to my bank account tonight. Just a small piece of it. 5 million. Just to keep my men paid so they don't turn on me." "Are you stupid?" Ralph sneered. He took a step forward, dropping his hand from Bella's waist. He stood right in front of Richard, looking down at the older man with pure disgust. That warehouse and the cars inside were supposed to be my payment for taking your trash daughter. You burned my payment. The deal is dead. You get nothing. I didn't burn it, Richard yelled, his voice cracking with pure desperation. Someone attacked me. Someone set the fire to ruin me. You have to help me, Ralph. We are family now. We are not family, Ralph said, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper. If you ever call me your son again, I will cut your tongue out right here on this carpet. Do not test me tonight, Richard. Richard's eyes darted back and forth. He was trapped. He was out of options. Then his desperate eyes landed on Bella. Bella was standing a few feet behind Ralph, playing her part perfectly. She had her head tilted down, her hands clutched together in front of her chest, looking like a terrified little girl. Bella, Richard gasped, stepping around Ralph to get to her. Bella, tell your husband to help your family. We took care of you your whole life. You owe us. Tell him to give me the money. Richard reached his hand out, aiming right for Bella's bare arm to grab her, just like he always used to do when he was going to drag her down to the dark basement. Bella stayed totally still. She knew she could easily catch his wrist, twist it backward, and snap his arm in half before he even blinked. Her muscles tightened, ready to strike. But before Richard's sweaty fingers could even touch her skin, a heavy blur of black soot flashed in front of her. Ralph stepped right between them. He moved faster than a striking snake. He grabbed Richard's outstretched hand by the wrist. He didn't just hold it, he twisted it hard. Richard let out a loud, high-pitched scream of pain. He dropped to his knees on the thick hotel carpet. Don't you ever touch her, Ralph snarled. His eyes were totally black with rage. She belongs to me now. If you reach for my property again, I will break every finger on this hand. Bella stood frozen behind Ralph's broad back. She stared at his wide shoulders. He was defending her. He called her his property, which she hated, but he actually stepped in front of a threat to protect her. Nobody in her entire life had ever done that for her. Ever. Except the little boy, with the bleeding arm in the alley 14 years ago. Richard was sobbing on the floor now, holding his twisted wrist. Okay, please, Ralph, let me go. Ralph threw Richard's arm away like it was infected garbage. He pulled a pure white handkerchief from his suit pocket and slowly wiped his hands. Get out of my sight, Ralph said calmly. And if you ever come near me or my wife again, I will make sure the next fire burns your house down with you inside it. Richard scrambled up from the floor. He didn't look back. He ran toward the hotel exit, pushing past waiters and spilling drinks as he fled into the cold Chicago night. The entire ballroom was completely silent. Everyone watched the Washington family boss run away like a beaten dog. Ralph turned around slowly. He looked at Bella. His chest was rising and falling heavily. The anger was still burning hot in his eyes, but when he looked at her pale face, his expression softened just a tiny fraction. Are you okay? He asked gruffly. Yes, Bella whispered. For the first time all day, her voice was actually shaking a little bit, and she wasn't faking it. The confusion in her chest was growing. She wanted to destroy this man, but he was wearing her childhood bracelet over his heart, and he just protected her from the monster who ruined her life. Ralph stared at her trembling lips for a long second. Then, he gently held out his arm. Come here, he said quietly. Bella stepped forward and slid her hand through the bend of his arm. He pressed her hand against his side, trapping her warm fingers against his ribs. Let's get a drink, Ralph said to the silent room. Instantly, the loud music started playing again, and the people went back to talking and laughing, pretending they didn't just watch a king get destroyed. The party moved on, but Bella knew everything had just changed. Her father was completely broken, just like she planned. But her plan for her dangerous husband was getting completely messed up. The golden lights of the massive chandeliers felt too bright now. Bella kept her hand hooked around Ralph's thick arm as he led her away from the center of the room. The music was loud, a heavy jazz beat with a deep bass that shook the floorboards under her expensive high heels, but it sounded like background noise. All she could focus on was the solid, hot wall of muscle moving next to her. Ralph walked with a heavy, angry grace. People quickly stepped out of their way, giving them a wide circle of space. Nobody wanted to be near the mad dog of Chicago after watching him break another boss's wrist. They reached a long, dark wooden bar in the far corner of the ballroom. The bartender, a skinny young man in a white vest, immediately dropped the towel he was holding and rushed over. He looked terrified. His hands were shaking as he placed 2 small square napkins on the polished wood. "Mr. Kang," the bartender stammered, his voice cracking. "What can I get for you?" "Double whiskey, neat. The good stuff," Ralph ordered, his voice still low and rough from the fight. He didn't even look at the boy. He turned his dark eyes to Bella. "Give her a glass of ice water, with a lemon." Bella wanted a real drink. She wanted a strong, burning shot of tequila to calm the wild jumping of her heart. But she remembered his rule from earlier. She was not allowed to drink alcohol. She played the obedient, scared wife perfectly. She lowered her head and watched the bartender place a tall glass of freezing water in front of her. The ice clinked against the glass. It was the only sound she focused on. Ralph picked up his heavy crystal glass. He drank half of the dark brown whiskey in one swallow. He closed his eyes for a second, letting the strong alcohol burn down his throat. When he opened them again, he looked directly at Bella. "Why did you just stand there?" Ralph asked. His voice cut right through the loud music. He stepped closer to her, invading her personal space. Bella could smell the rich whiskey on his breath and the clean scent of his skin. "What do you mean?" Bella asked softly. She wrapped both her hands around her cold water glass, letting the freezing temperature ground her. "When your father reached for you," Ralph said, leaning his hip against the dark wood of the bar. His dark eyes narrowed, studying her face like she was a complicated puzzle. "You froze. You looked like a deer trapped in the headlights of a truck. You didn't step back. You didn't raise your hands to protect your face. Why?" Bella looked down at the slice of yellow lemon floating in her water. "I am used to it," she lied smoothly. It was a half-lie. The old Bella, the weak girl from 14 years ago, was used to it. The new Bella, the underground boss, would have broken his jaw. "If I move, he just hits me harder. It is better to just stay still and let it happen." Ralph's jaw tightened so hard a muscle jumped in his cheek. He hated that answer. It disgusted him. He placed his half-empty glass down on the bar with a loud, heavy thud. "That is pathetic," Ralph said coldly. "Everyone has a choice to fight back. You choose to be a victim. You let them turn you into a weak, empty shell." Bella felt a sharp spike of pure anger hit her chest. Her fingers squeezed the wet glass so hard she almost broke it. He had no idea who she was. He had no idea the blood she spilled to crawl out of her family's basement and build an empire that rivaled his own. She wanted to look him in the eye and tell him that she ordered the fire that ruined her father. She wanted to tell him she was the shadow that his own men feared in the dark alleys of the South Side. But she bit the inside of her lip and kept quiet. She had to protect her secret. Ralph looked away from her, staring out at the crowded room of laughing killers and rich thieves. He reached up and rubbed his chest, right over the spot where the old string bracelet rested in his inner pocket. "I knew a girl once," Ralph said. His voice suddenly dropped. The angry edge completely vanished, replaced by a deep, heavy sadness that made Bella's breath catch in her throat. "She had nothing. She was smaller than you. She was starving, wearing dirty rags, and she lived in an alley that smelled like dead rats." Bella stared at his side profile. His sharp nose, his strong chin. He was talking about her. "But she never froze," Ralph continued, speaking softly into the loud room. "When 3 older boys tried to steal her sleeping spot, she didn't cry. She didn't wait to get hit. She picked up a broken glass bottle and fought them like a wild demon. She took their punches, but she made them bleed. She was the bravest thing I ever saw." He turned his head slowly and looked back down at Bella. His dark eyes were full of ghosts. "She didn't have a rich family. She didn't have a mansion or expensive dresses. But she had a fire inside her that could burn a whole city down," Ralph whispered. "You have all the money in the world now, Bella, but you don't have a single spark of her fire." Bella felt a hot tear prick the corner of her eye. She forced it back down. It took every single drop of her strength not to reach out and touch his face. He remembered. He remembered the exact moment they met. He remembered her bravery. He loved her for the exact thing she was hiding from him right now, her dangerous, violent strength. Before Bella could say a single word, a loud, ugly laugh echoed right behind them. "Well, well, well, if it isn't the mad dog himself, playing the protective husband now, Kang." Ralph's sadness instantly vanished. His entire body went rigid. He turned around slowly, putting himself slightly in front of Bella again. A man was walking toward them. He was shorter than Ralph, but built like a square brick wall. He wore a shiny silver suit that looked too tight across his wide stomach. He had greasy black hair pushed straight back and a thick gold chain resting against his hairy chest. It was Tony Valenti. He was an underboss for the Italian family, and he was known for being loud, stupid, and very greedy. Two massive bodyguards walked right behind him, glaring at Ralph. "Tony," Ralph said, his voice dropping to that dangerous, quiet growl. "I suggest you turn around and walk back to the buffet table. I am not in the mood for your garbage tonight." Tony laughed again, a wet, ugly sound. He stopped right in front of Ralph. "Tough break today, huh? I heard the news. Washington's South Side warehouse burned to the ground. That was supposed to be your wedding present, right? The key to the South Docks. Guess your little merger deal is dead in the water." "My business is my business," Ralph said, not moving an inch. "The South Docks belong to me, fire or no fire." "Not anymore," Tony sneered, showing a gold tooth in his smile. "With Washington broke, that territory is open air, and the Italian family is breathing it in. You lost out, Kang. You got handed a pile of ashes." Tony shifted his greasy eyes away from Ralph and looked directly at Bella. He looked her up and down, staring at the tight fit of her red silk dress and the bare brown skin of her shoulders. He licked his lips. It made Bella want to take a knife and cut his tongue out. "And this must be the replacement bride," Tony mocked. He took a step closer to Bella, ignoring the deadly look on Ralph's face. "Washington's unwanted trash. I gotta say, Kang, she looks pretty, but she doesn't look like she's worth a $12 million loss. Does she even speak, or is she just a pretty doll?" Tony reached his thick, hairy hand out. He was aiming to grab a piece of Bella's dark hair. Ralph shifted his weight, getting ready to destroy Tony right there in the middle of the ballroom. But Bella was faster. She couldn't let Ralph start a full mob war in front of 300 people. It would bring the police, and it would ruin her own plans for the South Docks. She had to stop it, but she had to act like a scared girl doing it. As Tony's hand came close to her face, Bella let out a loud, fake gasp of fear. She jumped backward, bumping hard into the wooden bar. As she moved, she swung her arm wildly, acting completely panicked and clumsy. Her hand smashed directly into her tall glass of freezing ice water. The glass tipped over perfectly. The freezing cold water, the heavy ice cubes, and the wet yellow lemon flew right off the bar and splashed directly onto Tony Valenti's expensive silver suit pants and his shiny leather shoes. "Damn it," Tony screamed. He jumped back, shaking his wet leg. The freezing water left a massive dark stain right over his crotch. He looked ridiculous. Oh, I am so sorry," Bella cried out. She pressed her hands against her mouth, making her eyes huge and terrified. She backed away, shaking her head. "I was just scared. My hand slipped. Please forgive me." Tony's face turned bright red with pure fury. He didn't care that he was in a crowded room. He didn't care that she was a woman. He raised his thick, heavy hand high in the air, getting ready to slap Bella right across her face. He never even finished swinging. Ralph moved so fast he was just a black blur. He grabbed Tony by the throat with his left hand, squeezing so hard Tony's eyes instantly bulged out of his head. With his right hand, Ralph reached inside his suit jacket. In less than a second, he pulled out a heavy black pistol and jammed the cold metal barrel directly under Tony's fat chin. The loud jazz music kept playing, but every single person standing near the bar completely froze. The two Italian bodyguards reached for their weapons, but Ralph's own men suddenly appeared from the crowd, pointing guns directly at the bodyguards' heads. The air was so thick with tension it felt hard to breathe. "Finish that swing, Tony," Ralph whispered. His voice was so soft, but it carried a promise of absolute death. "Move your hand one more inch toward my wife. I dare you. I will blow your brains all over this bar, and I will sleep perfectly fine tonight." Tony choked. He couldn't breathe. His hands flew up in the air, showing he was giving up. Sweat poured down his greasy face, mixing with the melted ice water on his suit. Ralph stared into Tony's terrified eyes for 5 long, silent seconds. He wanted to pull the trigger. Bella could see it in the tight muscles of his back. He wanted blood. But slowly, Ralph lowered the gun. He shoved Tony backward hard. Tony stumbled and fell into one of his own bodyguards. "Get out of my city," Ralph said, slipping the gun back into his jacket as if nothing happened. "If I see you near the South Docks, I will kill you." Tony didn't say a single word. He turned around, completely humiliated with his wet pants and bruised neck, and walked fast toward the exit with his men. The crowd slowly went back to talking, though everyone was now whispering about what just happened. Ralph turned back to the bar. He picked up his empty whiskey glass, tapped it on the wood for a refill, and looked at Bella. His dark eyes were burning hot, completely searching her face. "Did you spill that water on purpose?" Ralph asked. Bella shook her head quickly, keeping the scared act going. No, I swear. He scared me. I jumped and my hand hit the glass." Ralph stared at her. He didn't blink. He was looking at her hands. They weren't shaking. A girl who just almost got hit by a mob boss should be shaking, but Bella's hands were perfectly steady. Ralph noticed it. His eyes narrowed with deep suspicion. "You are a very strange girl," Ralph muttered. He took his fresh drink from the bartender and swallowed it fast. He slammed the glass down. "We are leaving. I have had enough of looking at these rats." He didn't offer his arm this time. He just grabbed her hand. His long, calloused fingers wrapped around hers tightly. He dragged her through the crowd, out the heavy glass doors, and back out into the freezing Chicago storm. The valet quickly brought the massive black SUV around. The wind was howling, blowing thick white snow everywhere. Bella shivered in her thin silk dress as she climbed into the back seat. Ralph slid in next to her, and the guard slammed the door shut, locking the brutal cold outside. The car started moving immediately, tires crushing the fresh snow on the dark streets. Inside the SUV, it was completely dark except for the passing orange streetlights. The silence was heavy and thick. Ralph looked totally exhausted. The adrenaline from the party and the fight had crashed. He leaned his head back against the soft leather seat and closed his eyes. He let out a long, ragged breath. Slowly, his hand moved to his chest. He reached inside his jacket pocket and pulled out the small, dirty red and black string bracelet. Bella sat perfectly still on her side of the car. She watched him in the shadows. He didn't know she was looking. He held the cheap string between his large fingers, rubbing his thumb over the clumsy knots she tied for him 14 years ago. He looked so sad. He looked like a man drowning in the ocean, holding onto a tiny piece of wood. "What is that?" Bella asked softly. The sound of her voice made him jump a little. Ralph quickly closed his huge fist around the bracelet, hiding it from her sight. He turned his head and glared at her in the dark. "It is none of your business," Ralph snapped. His voice was defensive and angry. Bella shifted closer to the middle of the seat. She couldn't stop herself. She needed to push him. She needed to know exactly how deep his obsession went. "It looks very old," Bella said quietly, looking at his closed fist. "It looks like a piece of dirty garbage. Why do you carry it in your suit?" The reaction was explosive. Ralph unbuckled his seatbelt, leaned across the wide seat, and grabbed Bella by both her shoulders. He pushed her back against the window glass. He wasn't hurting her, but his grip was incredibly strong. His face was inches from hers. The streetlights flashed over his wild, angry eyes. "Do not ever call it garbage," Ralph hissed. His voice shook with pure, unhidden rage. "Do you hear me? You know nothing. This piece of string is worth more than all the money in my bank account. It is worth more than your entire life, your family's life, and everything you have ever touched." Bella's breath stopped. Her heart slammed against her ribs so hard it physically hurt. She stared into his dark eyes, seeing the absolute truth burning in them. He wasn't lying. He really loved that memory more than anything in the world. She felt a heavy, hot tear build up in her eye. She forced it away. She kept her face blank. "Who gave it to you?" Bella whispered, her voice barely making a sound over the hum of the car engine. Ralph stared at her lips, then up to her dark eyes. His grip on her shoulders slowly loosened, but he didn't pull away. He stayed close, his hot breath mixing with hers in the cold car. "The only person in this rotten world who ever actually mattered to me," Ralph said softly. The anger was gone, leaving only pure, empty heartbreak. He looked out the window at the falling snow. "And I am going to find her. Even if I have to burn this whole damn city to the ground to do it, I will find her."